Okay, so I thought we would do kind of a start to finish, more simple flowers painting together. So I wrote this out earlier. So my paper that I'm using is this one from Amazon called Olitoda. It's not 100% cotton, but it holds up well and it's really cheap. You get a stack of like 150 pages and it's pretty cheap. So I like it for this, but it's not archival. It's not going to last me 50 years, but that's okay. My paints, I'm using Dr. P.H. Martin's, this is the Hydrus liquid watercolors. So it's actually a pigment-based watercolor. It's just really concentrated and beautiful. And my brushes, okay, so these are the Silver Brush brand, and I'm using the Black Velvet line. I'm going to use a size 8 for my first wash of paint, and then a size 4 for the concentrated paint, and a size 6 for water to blend it out. And at the end, I will probably use, where is it? Where are my brushes? I'll probably use my Fumui size 2. It's a quill mop brush. It's synthetic and it holds a lot of water and paint, but comes to a really nice point for thin stems and everything. Last thing I want to show is my paint puck. It's really dirty, so don't mind it. But this is like one of my favorite tools in my little painting arsenal. And it's so great because it holds all different sizes of brushes and it dries them in this inverted position, which is ideal. Start with a watery mix. So going back to my palette, I'm going to take some of this red that we just made, pick it up and put it in here so I can get it really watery. I like to do a watery mixture for my first pass with paint, just so that it's not going to be too dark to begin with. I can always go darker. And for this flower, we're going to make it nice and big, and we're just going to do it forward facing. It's kind of more simple like that. So just some big petals, just like that. And I'm going to try to leave a space in the middle rather than bring everything to the center. But let's see, I want to make these round. And the reason I'm doing that is that I want the sides of each petal to overlap each other. Even if you don't see it right now, I kind of want this even more watery. So these first two petals I made are pretty, symmetrical and round. I'm going to try to make my next ones not so like that, not so symmetrical. Maybe I'll do a little curve in it. Okay, this one's a lot bigger than the other one, so that looks kind of weird, but that's okay. And I'm just kind of using more and more water because it's looking a little bit dark in value for my preference. All right, I think I need to go faster and try to just make it a little more choppy. It took kind of a while, so you can see that this has dried, but that's not really a problem. Okay, I made everything pretty symmetrical. We're just going to go with that. Now, if you wanted to, you could do some lifting, swiping up some of that paint. This first pass does not need to be that perfect. I don't mind if I see some streaks in there. We're going to be painting over this soon, and a lot of this is going to get covered up. So I'm just doing that for some variation in the look and also to lighten that, lighten that color a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and paint our second one. Let's go, I have purple, I have a lot of purple, so I'm going to use purple, but whatever color you want is good. So I'm grabbing some from the concentrated paint and I'm putting it in the next well over so I can get it nice and watery. And this one, we're going to do it similar where it's going to be kind of like open facing for the most part, but the bottom petal or two, we're going to just make this big kind of C shape, this crescent moon shape, and that will just offer some variation. So I'm going to get kind of close to this because that one's so big, this is going to be pushed off the side. So adding some more water even. Remember, I want those petals to overlap each other because then you can show, with the negative painting, you can show the overlaps. Let me do this one now. Just a swipe there. And how about one more? This one's going to be thin. Something like that. Bring these more to the center. And then if you want to do any lifting, you can. Even if this were giving me some blooms or some streakiness, like that pink one turned out kind of streaky, I don't really mind. Because again, it's probably going to get covered up anyways with the details we add later. So just keep that in mind. All right, I'm going to go ahead and dry this with my dryer. Okay, that's completely dry. I'm just going to wait for it to cool off completely before I start painting. Otherwise, the water will evaporate quickly and it will leave hard lines and all this other stuff I don't want. Okay, so the brushes I'm going to use for the next part are size 4 and 6. I'll use the 4 for the paint and the 6 for water to blend it out. And I'm going to tackle this pink flower first. Let me zoom in a little bit. And the first thing I'm going to do is separate the petals. So I have to decide, do I want it kind of like a plumeria where it's all overlapping on the same side going around? Or do I want to just take my creative license and make it so it's going to be, outlined on this side and that side, and it's not going to have any real symmetry to it? I'd say for the most part, I like to just look at what's on the paper and see if something kind of stands out. And like looking at this one, I see this one overlapping that because I can see a little streak of paint there. So I want to overlap that one And then I'll look, okay, maybe I'll overlap that one too. This one's pretty strong. Maybe I'll overlap that, and so on. So I'm just going to look at what I have and go for that instead of trying to make it symmetrical. So I will start here with the one that kind of stands out to me. I'm going to switch this so it's comfortable for my wrist. And I am getting my size 6 with the water. So I fill it with water and I'm just tapping it on the side. So you can see it's got a lot of water in it. And then I'm going to grab my concentrated paint, and you can see that's also got a lot of water in it because I want it to be dark and concentrated, but I also want it to move when I go to blend it out. And if I don't have enough water, it's going to just stick where it is. So I'm going to start over here. I'm looking at this petal and I'm trying to carve it out. This is negative painting, where you paint the space around your subject. So I put the paint down and now I'm just kind of picking it up with the tip of my brush and I'm dragging it down to the center. Oh, what am I doing? My hand is kind of getting bumped or bumping the table and it's doing some weird stuff. Anyways, trying to save that. So I'm just blending it out here. I've got to get a glass of water. So from there, sorry, it goes kind of quick. I was touching the paint with my water brush, sticking the tip of the brush in there and just kind of smushing down the brush so that the paint flows through and hits the water. And then I can smush it out. I don't know if these are technical terms, and just blend it out and following. I'm staring at this one. I'm not looking at this petal. I want to see where this one is going to have its shape. I need some water. Hold on. I'm not sure if we are having a volcanic episode going on. I get really affected by the fog in the air. So that might be what's going on. Okay, so I'm going to look for the next spot where I think I see an overlap. So I'm going to have this petal overlap that one, which means I'm going to carve this one out with this space. So before I start, I will just kind of walk through the steps because I kind of go quickly once you start. So I'm going to put paint in this corner. I'm not going to make a whole streak of paint because it ends up looking like really uniform. I usually get a fat line of paint and I want it to look a little bit more organic where it's thicker there and thinner there. And you totally can do the line. It's just your personal preference on what look you like. So this is usually what I try to do. I'll put some paint here and then I'll drag it out to the center, or I'll put some paint here and maybe a little bit along the way, and then I will blend them out. So when I'm blending, I'm kind of touching the tip of this water brush so it hits that paint line, and then I'm pushing the brush down so that the water kind of spreads out onto the paper. So the tip of the brush stays along the edge of that petal, but when I push down, it allows the paint to flow through that water that I'm pushing down, and then you get this like easier transition. Whereas I'm not just using the tip of the brush the whole time and then like bringing it out like that with just the tip. I'm using the tip to carve that line and also pushing down with the belly of the brush to help it fade into the rest of the petal. So I hope that makes sense. Let's do that again. I'm going to carve this one out over here. Now just make sure the area you're working on is completely dry. If I were to work on this petal right here, this area is still wet and you're going to have issues with that. So make sure the area is dry. Oh, and I hope I was in the camera. Okay, let's do it again. So kind of walking through it before, I'm going to put the paint down in this corner. I'll take my water brush and I'm going to use the tip of the brush to carve that shape of the petal. And I'm also going to be like using the tip and then pushing down. And that way the paint will flow through the brush and do a much smoother fade out through the water that I'm putting down with the belly. I'm really not trying to make this too complicated. I'm trying to give you the reason behind it, but really just carve with the tip of the brush and then smush it down on the side at the same time. Okay, so here we go with the concentrated paint. So you see I'm just doing like this bit right there. I'm going to grab that water line or that paint line and carve it out with the tip, and then also push the brush down to help fade it out more easily. Okay, so what do I want next? Let's have this one carve around. Let's see if I can zoom in even more for this one. All right. And just notice what you're dealing with. Is your water and paint like exploding and going too far? You might have too much water in your paint mixture, too much water in your water brush. Are you going to blend it out and it goes nowhere? You might need a little bit more water in your paint mixture. You might need more water in your water brush. Or is the paint mixture too concentrated and you go with too much water and you go to blend it out and the water just pushes the paint away instead of helping it blend out? There's so many different combinations of water and paint and issues. So you just got to kind of use your observation with what you're dealing with. So I'm going again with this. So I'm looking at this petal, so I'm really carving out that shape. This, I just end up making this kind of triangular shape. I want to stay on this petal that I have here, but really I could go way out here if I wanted to with the paint. It's just going to give me a different look. And then I'm doing what I said before. Use the tip to carve that line and the belly to kind of smooth it out. So I hope that made sense. I wanted to show some variation there. So I put way thicker of an amount, but I'm still paying attention to that petal edge, and I don't want to be blending the paint too much that way. Okay, I'm not sure if I love that big blob of paint. I'm going to go in with more water and try to kind of move this around and blend it out even more. But as it dries, I run into the risky area of dealing with like damp paper, and that gets tricky. Okay, so let's do this last one here. I think I'll have this one on top of that. Make sure I'm in the camera here. Where am I here? Okay, so getting my brush with water ready, getting my brush with paint ready. And for this last one, I will show you what it looks like when I just do a full line of paint. And this is totally an option, so just see what you like. So I'm starting there, and I'm just going to bring down this full line of paint. Now before it dries, I got to go in and start blending that out. So I don't know, I think that looks really nice. I think sometimes it bugs me and it looks too much like a line of this darker paint. And then sometimes I'm like, oh, that looks really nice. So up to you. Now, okay, can I go in? I'm just looking how wavy that is. I'm wondering if I could correct that. So I'm going to try to do a solid stroke with my brush. And I went in with more concentrated paint. If I had like a watery mixture, that would have been a disaster. If you're going to go back in onto wet paper, you got to make sure that your mixture is more concentrated. You can't have more water in the mixture or else you'll have blooms, which is fine if you're going for that. Okay, so that petal looks kind of weird, but whatever, we're kind of stuck with it. All right, so the next thing we can do with this flower is to add some folds and some interesting aspects. I'm going to dry it completely first. Okay, so now we're going to use the same technique of negative painting, and we're going to add some little folds and things in the petal. If you want, you could use more of like a shadowy color, but I'm just going to pick the same red-pink mixture we've been doing. Okay, so I'm going to, I think this is the part where people get tripped up, and the reason I feel a little bit more familiar with it is because I've been painting these transparent flowers, and I include a lot of folds and flips and all this stuff, so I'm a little more familiar with where to put those things. And honestly, that just comes with like looking at flowers in nature or looking at other people's floral paintings and just seeing how they put folds in and things like that. But some simple ones to do, we can look at the sides of the petals like this one. I'll use my pencil, and we'll just come in off the side and curve in and then kind of curve back out. And we can do that again over here. And I don't always get it right. Like that's kind of a sharp angle. So I'm going to erase that and try to make a smoother transition out. So you can do it on the sides. You could try to do it on the top. Let's see, for this one, I think I'll do like the double at the top. So we're just basically this, but shifting it more towards the tip of the petal. So something like that. That one I think is a little too drastic. So just little things like that. Maybe here we'll just have it on one side. And over here, something like that. Maybe a little bit here too. How about that? So we're going to go for that with this flower. And basically the same technique of adding some concentrated paint, blending out. Again, you can choose to do like the solid streak of paint, or you can put it in like certain areas and blend it out. And that's what I tend to do. Like looking at this one right here, I'm going to put paint at the edges of these folds. I got to just move quickly before the paint dries. So I put it there, there, there. And now we're going to make sense of it when I blend them out to each other. So I feel like I got to be a little bit more careful when I use pencil. When I'm just kind of freehanding it, I can like carve in more or not in as far, and you won't tell because there's no pencil line that's supposed to guide me. It's just like up to me. But yeah, same technique. I was just, using the tip to carve the edge and then pushing down the brush to help that paint flow through the water, through my brush. And there we go. We have a little folded area. Okay, I can do over here as long as I'm not going to be blending into any wet area. So let's do the same thing. And again, stop and notice what you're dealing with. If you go to blend it out and the paint's already dry, you're going to need more water in your paint mixture so that it can stay wet for longer, or you're going to have to move faster and blend it out sooner. Another thing, like if I was dealing with a long stretch, instead of putting paint here and there, I'll put it in one spot, blend it out, and then add it to the next spot. So right now I'm painting wet on dry, wet paint on dry paper. going to take my brush with water and I'm going to start blending it out, using the tip to follow that pencil edge. I'm blending it out over here. And so now I've created wet paper over here where I want to add more paint. So now we're dealing with wet on wet. So I'm just going to add some paint while it's still wet. And again, do a little bit of blending. There's less water in my blending brush this time because there was water on the paper to begin with. So if I come in with too much water, it's going to start pushing that paint away. So you have to make these little micro adjustments and see what you're dealing with. Let's see, that got really light. I'm going to see if I can go in with more concentrated paint. Now I'm kind of in that damp zone, which is the danger zone. This paper is pretty forgiving, so I'm not expecting much blooms, but so I put that paint down and I'm going with just a little water on my brush. And just a little water on my brush. And really it honestly becomes kind of like a feel. It's a little hard to explain. So, give yourself a lot of these opportunities. If you don't want to do it on your actual painting, just make an exercise sheet and you're just dealing with curves and you try to blend it out, you try to go back in, and that's a little bit less pressure to get it right and just more freedom to experiment and really get a feel for your water ratios, water paint ratios, and just water ratios in general. All right, so let's go back over here. I'm going to do the double. Ooh, I can see that this is kind of thin. It's going to dry out fast. So instead of adding paint here, I'm just going to blend this out right away. So that was just my call on the fly when I saw that mixture was drier than I thought it was. So now I've got I've got water over here and I can add paint. So this is a wet on wet for this part. And it's a little bit watery, kind of losing that dark value. So before it's completely dry, I'll go back in and I'm going to make sure my paint mixture is not too watery. I'm like scraping it on the side of the well, getting the water off, and then just with the tip of the brush going into the really concentrated mixture. And now I'm adding that right there. And I do like to add it where it looks like the fold is kind of dipping in, where, I imagine the shadow might be a little bit darker. So I just generally pick the dipped in areas like there. But dealer's choice, up to you. I'm going to stop fussing with this. It seems like it's kind of getting streaky and weird. Let's see. I think I'll wait on that because this paper is a little bit wet. Let's go in over here. So I'm going to make sure I have more water in my paint mixture. Last time, it dried out really quickly. It was not enough water. So knowing myself, I swing into the opposite extreme. So now I've got way too much water, but that's okay. I'll make it work. I'm just making this little blob of paint, going in with the brush. I'm going to drag it along that fold. More paint back in there. Okay, I can darken it later. I just find I don't know, not getting the timing right or something, and it's just starting to look splotchy. So instead of me messing with it like I'm currently doing in this damp stage, I'm just going to start drying things and come back later if I really want to darken it more. Okay, so same thing over here. Let's see if I can put water in both spots. I'm sorry, paint. So I'm going to throw some paint down here and up here and just kind of blend them to connect each other. So it's like I'm being careful with the tip of my brush following that, and then I just kind of like smush it out and go a little bit faster. Okay, I'm gonna let that dry and come back to this one right here. All right, so concentrated in that little dip, and then over here, maybe I'll make it a thicker swipe of paint. And then I'm going to use the tip to help it along the pencil edge, and then the belly of the brush to help blend it out. And then I just don't stop when I see the dark part faded out. I'm really making sure that even the lighter mixture of paint that starts happening and flowing that way, I want to make sure that gets smoothed out too. I mean, it's fine. Like I see some splotchiness here and there. It's fine if it doesn't, but it's just my preference. All right, so let's go back to this one and finish our last folded area. All right, some paint here and some paint here, and then connect them. Rinsing my brush, dabbing it, and just kind of smoothing out the rest. Okay, so looking at this one, it's pretty much dry. This paper dries really fast because it's not 100% cotton. So, all right, looking at this one, I'm not going to try to add paint to cover up that splotchiness, but I am going to go darker in value. I think that'll attract your eye to the darker value instead of looking at that splotchiness. Let me see. I'm going to just try to erase some pencil line. So what I'm going to do here is less water for everything. I'm not trying to blend it out and, make the full, what am I trying to say? I'm not trying to blend it out and carve out this fold anymore and just like blend it onto the rest of the petal. I'm just trying to really concentrate on these shadows, and I want it darker. I don't need to spread it out a lot. So that means I need less water in my blending brush, my water brush, and less water in my paint mixture. I want this pretty concentrated, and I'm just going to put some real thin concentrated mixtures, and I don't want this to go far. So my brush has a lot less water, and I'm just using the tip of it just to kind of get rid of the hard line. I don't want it to spread very far. I just want to get rid of the hard line. And you could even leave the hard line. It kind of makes the shadow look even more pronounced and drastic. Now, if I go back in, there's a chance it'll spread a lot because I have water on the paper now. I just love when it gets to that really dark value. It makes a big difference for your paper, for your painting. Add some here too around this adjacent petal. So barely any water in this brush, and I'm just trying to feather out the hard line without making the paint travel very far. Okay, let's do that for a couple more spaces. Places. All right, so concentrated paint, just a barely damp brush. And let's go much darker over here. And over here. And then just trying to feather out the hard line. I'm rinsing my brush along the way because, I'm just using the tip of this brush, but it is going to pick up paint. And if you're trying to go further, it's going to start dragging that paint. So just keep that in mind. Okay, more of the same thing. Okay, I can stop there. Okay, so I'm going to stop there with the pink flower, and let's move on to the purple. So same first step of defining the petals. So we're going to see where the edges are. And when I have these like C-shaped, crescent moon shaped ones, I always do those first because I like to see both edges of it, and I don't like to cover it with other petals. So I know that that's going to stand out, so I'm going to outline that first. I keep forgetting this purple's a little temperamental with me. It gets a little splotchy. That's okay. I'm going to try to do this in as few brush strokes as possible, because if you're dealing with a splotchy paint, you don't want to go back in too many times. So I'm just going to put it at both ends here and blend out to meet each other right there. So get in, get out, leave it alone. Okay, same thing for this side. I'm just trying to figure out the shape I want it to be. Something like that. So I ended up doing a full swipe of paint. And I'm just, because I see it kind of drying out, I'm adding more paint to that line to try to avoid a hard line. And again, if you want to fuss with it, if you're dealing with a temperamental paint, don't. This one gets real streaky. If I try to go back in and move that paint around, it's going to argue with me. Okay, so what do I want next? I see this one coming in front of that and kind of looping out and then back in, so I'm going to do that. Again, at this stage, when I'm kind of just focusing on defining the edges of the petals, I usually use a bit more watery of a mixture. It's going to blend further. It's not like I'm trying to go really dark with shadows. Right now we're just outlining things. So tip of the brush to touch the paint and then smush it on its belly and blend it out. And if I don't love it, I'm not going to go back in at this point because this is a temperamental paint. So that's just, I'm familiar with this purple mixture that I made. For some reason, it gets really splotchy if I'm going back in and fussing with it. So I'm going to try to avoid that. All right, now I'm going to define that petal. I'm coming down to this area where it's got some white spaces, so I might try to, respect the white spaces and paint around them. Okay, stopping there. Okay, I was going to try to make everything easy, but I'm going to talk about one kind of more advanced, complicated thing. You have to sometimes pay attention to order if you want certain things looking like they're on top of other things. So looking at this petal, since I made it so much skinnier, I could see it like having a fold in it. So it's almost like cupped in half. Oh my gosh, am I not in the paper? I gotta zoom out. Okay. So I can imagine this coming up and being like a cupped petal going that way. So if I want that to show up, it's got to be on top of whatever this petal is doing down here. So I could either put this petal fully behind this one, but if I want to make it look a little cooler, I would have this petal overlapping the back of this one, but the curved up part will be on top of that. So all that to say, order matters when you're trying to make things look overlapped a certain way. So I want this folded petal part to be closest to the viewer, and then will come this side of that petal, and then will come the back half of this petal. So let me dive into that and try to show it. It's still a little cool. I'm going to dry this completely. Okay, so in this series that I'm about to do, I want the fold of this petal to be on top of everything else I'm about to paint. So let's do that fold first. I'm going to have it come in this way and go down here. Okay, that's thin. I'm going to have issues. So before I go any further, I'm going to try to get rid of that hard line. And that really faded out over here. So I'm going to go back in with some paint and put it there and try to get out of here as fast as I can. So I'm just going to stop there. Now I'm going to dry it completely. Okay, so our next step is to define that petal edge. So putting some paint here and quickly going to blend it out. And I'm making it look just so slightly tucked behind this fold. You can see down in the corner. See if I can emphasize that a little bit. So because I outlined that one first, it looks like it's now on top of this one that I just outlined. So those are the times where order will matter. But again, you don't have to do it like that. That's getting more technical than it has to be. Let's move on to this flower, this petal. So when you get these like C-shaped ones, that's supposed to make it look like this petal is jutting at you. So you're not seeing it like fully out. It's more this way. So that's why it's so skinny. And now we're just going to add a line to make it look like the tip of this petal. So I'm just going to kind of wing it. I'm doing it with pencil in case that's helpful. Otherwise, I would just kind of make a wavy line like that. And again, we're not going to paint the flip part. We're going to paint the shadow part of the flipped petal. So this bottom section is where the petal is curving up that way. So that is the flip, and we're going to do the shadow underneath it. Just putting down some paint here. It looks watery enough. I think I can get by adding it in sections, but I don't know, it's kind of a long stretch. I probably should have just done a little bit at a time. Too late now. Okay, got water in my brush, so we're going to blend it out kind of quickly and connect them. That never gets old. It's so fun to see it kind of come into existence like that. All right, now I'm going to get some really concentrated purple and dab it in while it's still wet, just to emphasize the shadows. You can leave it, or you can be like me and fuss with things. So I'm just taking barely any water in this brush and helping this just feather out a little bit. That looks kind of blobby, so I'm going to try to smooth that out. Okay, I better stop touching that. Okay, what's a fun one we could do? We could do the center where it kind of folds out on both sides. So the way I do that, in view here, got my water brush ready, I got my brush with paint ready. So I'm going to come from the inside, kind of fan it out that way. And then the same thing on this side. So you end up with this kind of cupped petal. All right, and I'm going to go in with more concentrated paint, not so much water, and just darken some areas along the way. Over here it's practically dry, so I'm going to need to blend that out. Okay, sorry, I was not explaining anything. I'm just trying to smooth things out when I can, add darker colors if I can. All right, so let's do this one over here. Okay, so I'm going to add a big splotch down here. I'm going to blend it up because that's kind of thin and I could see it drying out before I was able to do the other side. So the water's there. Now I'm going to go back with paint so that becomes wet on wet, even though I started off wet on dry. I'm just blending that out. I think I'll kind of scrape off some of the water in my brush with paint, pick up more concentrated paint, and just add it into those little corners. And do some smoothing with a very minimally wet brush. Okay, I think I'll do the same thing for this one over here. So going back to more water with paint. And a bit, oh, that's my water brush. Big splotch of water. Let's add some up here. I'm sorry, paint. Let's add some up here, and now let's connect them. Okay, scraping off the water from that paintbrush, picking up concentrated purple, going back. Just feathering it out. Like so. Okay, so we basically have that flower now. Let's do something to the middles. So let's look at this pink one and let's add some color. Do we want blue? Do we just want pink? How about orange? I think it would be nice to put a lighter color in there. So I'm going to start by re-wetting the petals, and I'm just going to re-wet it. I'm not going to take the water into the middle. Okay, I'm going to try my best not to move the paper so I don't go out of view. So I'm adding a good amount of water because I have to do this somewhat slowly, or it takes me a little while. So I'm putting enough water so it doesn't dry out. And in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, I want enough water so when the paint hits this, it's going to flow into the petal a decent amount. It doesn't have to shoot through all the way to the tip, but I want it to, do some natural flowing onto the base of the petal. So I am looking for some shine, not just like a little bit, but a decent amount. Not petals, but enough where it looks like that paint's going to flow. So I've got that, and I'm going to quickly go in, grab some concentrated orange mixture. You kind of need enough where it will flow, and I'm starting from the center, and I'm just trying to let it touch the water that I put down. And this will take some experimenting. Sometimes you have way too much water on the paper, too much water in your paint mixture, and it just like goes out of control. Sometimes you have not enough, and the orange paint would go nowhere. So right now I'm just so I don't cause a line with just my water, I'm just kind of sopping up the water that I had spread out. But I like that. I'm actually not going to touch it. I could take my blending brush and just make this look less kind of veiny, but I don't know, I kind of like it, so I'm going to leave that. Now I'm thinking, what color? Should we go with orange again? Like an orangey pink, maybe? I think that would look nice. So I'm going to get some concentrated orange. I'll show you what I'm doing. Oh, no, it's too zoomed in. Okay, grabbing some concentrated orange. I'm going to pick up some of that pink, mix it in. So it's a real orangey red. All right, now we're going to do the same thing to this purple one. Now I've got a lot of white space in there, so I kind of want to preserve that. I'm not going to place the water on the white space, and I'm also not going to, whoops, it's just going to say I'm not going to put it on any of these folds because, I don't know, in my opinion, these shouldn't be blending onto the folds. Maybe they could be not blending, like the stamens or whatever you're adding. Maybe it could be on the overlap part, but it wouldn't be blended in. I don't know. That's just my opinion. And same with this, like this bottom flower, you're not seeing the tip of the flower, the inner tip of the flower where it connects with these other petals. You're seeing a folded over area. So really it would be like curving back before it joins up with everything. So I don't see the stamens or the middle of the flower like blending up onto that. So I'm not going to put water there. And, you know, maybe I'm just being too technical about it and you don't have to listen to any of that, but it's just my preference. So this concentrated orange yellow, I'm just going to start tapping it in and trying to encourage it to flow onto some of those areas. And then again, like over here where it's folding, I don't mind if it's kind of like going on that area, but I don't want it blending there. And I feel like this is not blending enough. So I'm going to take my damp brush and kind of help feather it out a little bit. I don't want it going too far. I'm not sure how well these colors go together. So it's blending, and now I'm just going to kind of sop it up so it doesn't go too far. And you know what, this, if you couldn't tell, this is not really my forte, adding the middles. So I'm still trying to figure it out and try to understand the look that I'm going for. I'm going to go back and add a little bit of this red color. I know it's not going to blend at this point, but just for some variation, I've got another color in there. Maybe I'll do that with the orange, but this is too wet. I don't want it going too splotchy and everywhere. Okay, so the next thing we have to do is some stems. Now, also, if you couldn't tell, I'm not the best at composition. So looking at this one with such a big flower petal, zoom out, or flower top, I would imagine this stem would like go much further off of the paper. This one might go just down to here, but this one, I don't know. I think we're gonna have to make it look like it's continuing off the paper. I generally like to go thinner with my stems. I just think they, I don't know, look a little bit daintier. Oh, this color is very bright green. All right, so I'm using my Fumui size 2, and now I'm just going to add some stems. That one, I don't think I'm going to add leaves coming from like right here. I'm going to try to make it look like it's coming from off the page. So here, I imagine it's coming down, coming out right about there. Oh, sometimes you just got to go for it and not. Okay, so that's a really straight stem, and I don't like the look. So I'm going to add some other bits to get some flowing going. And over here, I want to make it look like there's another stem coming up there. This is kind of dark for a first wash, but it's a little too late now. Actually, let's see if I can lift a little bit with a damp brush. It's going to look splotchy, but that's okay. We're going to go over it. So you can see I kind of did this flippy leaf here, and that's because we can add more details to it and make that look more 3D as well. I do love to add the little swirly whirly things in here, so I'm going to do that without trying to not get my hand in the paint. So, you know, I'll do a couple of spiral curls and have it go down, add some leaves. So it's pretty whimsical, if you couldn't tell. That just looks so random, so I'm going to have to add more. I'm going to try to get a lot lighter in value because everything with my greens looks pretty similar right now. So let's see if I can, okay, that's really, really light. I don't know, I'm not really good at this, okay. I don't know, I try to see what other people do. A lot of people add like, you know, lots of marks, and I don't know, I'm still trying to understand how to do this. I don't really know what I'm doing here. I was trying to add a little bit of a curve to the stem, but now I've got this funky second color going down. Oh well. Okay, shall we add some wispies up here? I just can't help myself. I love those little things. So we could do up here, going up, going around, adding some little leaves here and there. I don't know. Can we add more big leaves? I think we need some bigger ones. Sorry, it's hard for me to talk and explain because I am just trying to figure this out myself. Okay, I'm going to stop there. So those are some pretty simple leaf shapes. I'd say the most complicated one was where this one does like a severe flip. And so let's dry this and then add some details to the leaves. So one thing, if you're, I'm looking at my greenery and it seems a little bit, boring right now. If I were to add some really dark value greens in here, I think that alone would switch things up. So just keep that in mind. I might do that at the end, but first I'm going to detail this one. So this one's easy for me to see that I could add something to it. When it's a flip like that, you're just going to want to darken underneath where it's flipping. So I see it going up and flipping towards us, going that way. So I'm going to take some paint, kind of curve it at the end, and then just blend that out. I think that's a really fun one. And sometimes I go overboard and all the leaves are like flipping. So I have to stop myself a little bit. Okay, so what can we do with these other ones? We can just kind of make them look like cupped like that. I think that's one of my go-tos. So same technique really. I'm just going to like pick this leaf and have it do this kind of cupping motion. Maybe I'll carve in a little bit more and then blend that. And then what can we do over here? Just trying to think. I wonder if we can make it look like it's flipped over at the top. This might not work. Can we make it look like it's kind of twisting? You know, I got paint where I shouldn't. I don't know, does that look like it's twisting over itself at the top? I'm abandoning that mission. Kind of got to think about that one. Okay, well, that's another one we could do. How about we just, another like cupped one. But this time we're just going to add, I don't think we're going to even be able to blend. We're just going to add some darker paint right along here. Just to make it look like there is this, that it's cupped and there's this like back darker section to it. I don't know if that's too uniform. I don't know, does that work? Maybe I should have made it thinner at the top. Anyway, it's something we're trying. And then how about we kind of cup that one just a little bit. Something like that. That one seems pretty dry. I don't know, I'm out of ideas, so I guess we'll make that one kind of cupped too. An experiment. I'm going to try to have it more folded over at the top, but not so much at the bottom. I don't know. I don't know if this one's making so much sense. Oh well, let's just go with that. I'm going to add some darker value stems and little things in the background and call it a day. Oh geez, that's pretty green. Okay, last thing I'm going to do is add some of these metallic shimmery paints. So this is from Scrim. I ordered them all the way from Germany to Hawaii, and they are so cool. I don't know what binder they use, but it turns your paint, turns this paint into like this jelly consistency, and it is so fun to work with. Right now I'm just going to do little dots of the paint, but when you blend it out over big surfaces. It's so fun. So this is just fun to, be eye-catching. A little bit of shimmer. Okay, I think we're done. I hope you were able to paint along, and I'm always interested if anything was helpful, if anything is unclear, something where you're really getting a snag and you need more help with, just let me know. But thank you for following along.